Yeah. So after
You know,
that period, the three beating it for the third time, you're feeling better, but it
yeah,
kind of took a mental toll on you as well.
yeah,
Lost a lot of your money, lost a lot of confidence
yeah,
because you didn't feel like you had the mental edge. So that's when you went,
yeah,
jet skiing to the cove and kind of escaping it in a sense. And then you're like, enough, I got to go fight again. So that
yep.
kind of leads us back to where what you were saying of launching these brands you're currently running, I believe, right?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the eComm Growth Show.
Let's go.
My next door neighbor, we live on a big Gulf. Well, you guys know water, so this will be fun.
Yeah.
We're on a big Gulf access canal, like where four intersecting, like 180-foot canals all come together, and we're like right on the edge of a big basin. So it's beautiful.
That sounds
And it goes right out to the Gulf of Mexico. So if I had a fishing boat, a big fishing boat, I don't even have any bridges. I'm like right out to the river, right out to the Gulf.
nice.
The bad news is, as I'm sure you guys know, when the storms come through, there's nothing to stop them.
Just all open.
Right? There's nothing to slow them down. So my neighbor is right on the point, and I'm one house in, and he did the same thing, but didn't cut enough of the panels when Hurricane Charlie came through. Yeah, just a backyard pool on a back of a house. So I mean, just typical of what you would see. 26 grand to fix.
Wow.
Oh man,
That's crazy.
and to have to deal with that,
They're expensive.
Yeah.
It's a fairly regular thing. Well, I'm glad to hear that you kind of went through this one, and for the most part, everything went okay. Ken, we're super excited to have you on today because, you've been successful with multiple e-commerce brands, and one thing that we even love even more is that, more often than not, behind the success of like an e-commerce store there's a really cool story of how you got there. And so I want to start to open us up into how did you even get started on this e-commerce journey? Because I believe it actually starts with some hard news, right? And trying to find a solution for yourself, and eventually that turning into something that helps a ton of people.
Yeah, it really did, and it's similar but not the same to your story. I grew up in a Midwest town. My dad was a factory worker. Realistically, I was the poorest kid that I knew. I was the kid that didn't have Levi's. I was the kid who drove a $75 VW Bug that was worth every penny I paid for it. Up until my early 20s. I paid for all my own college by working literally 2 full-time jobs in the summer and a part-time job and a full-time job during the school year. It was not any fun, and it wasn't good for my it certainly wasn't good for my self-confidence. And I got to this kind of and I know I'm not the only one. That's why I really am thankful that you brought me on for this, because I know I need to tell my story more, because it's not for me. I know it's valuable to others, but I had gotten buried in this and just kind of started to, in my mind, accept this narrative that I had created in my own mind, that this is how I'm going to be. This is who I'm going to be. This is how life is going to be forever. And for some reason, just one day in my early 20s, I was at one of my full-time jobs, busted my tail, and I just had this kind of personal breakthrough of where I literally just said enough. Just like literally, like out loud, and like in the back of this warehouse, sweating my rear end off. I'm like, enough. I'm just not going to do this. And due to a number of just serendipity, I guess, for lack of a better word, I ended up in a situation where, as a very young man, packed up all my things, ended up by myself in South Florida, and ended up working with a group of what we would now call venture capitalists, guys that traveled around the country, bought up businesses or took equity in them, fixed them up, broke them down, whatever they had to do, and then moved on to the next one. and I got hooked up with them, and I spent about 2 years.
That's a major transition from, you know, in the warehouse busting your buns to like having that moment, packing everything up, and now you're with venture capitalists. I mean, I know you said there's some things that happened in the meantime, but what was that transition like?
It was a complete, like I said, it was a complete fluke that it happened. These venture capitalists came into this company that I had, you know, ended up with in Florida, and they came in one day, and I didn't realize, you know, I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know what they did. All of a sudden, they were showing up every day, and they came into the office, you know, kind of retail space, office space that I worked at. And they walked in with the guy who was the owner of the company. And I literally saw him, one of the guys, Texas oil men who were the venture capitalists. And I heard one of them whisper, and I saw him point, and they said, that guy. And I'm like, no way, get fired, right? I'm like, because they're letting everybody else go, right? And I'm like, oh, what am I going to do? I mean, like, I'm here by myself. I'm broke. I was broke before I got here, you know? Yeah. And I found out very quickly I was the only one they kept. They fired everybody. Oh my goodness. And like I said, it was just such a fluke. Yeah. And me and the two guys that ran the organization, this syndicate of venture capitalists, I ended up being his right-hand man, when in reality, what I was is I was his gopher, and my job was to do nothing but watch. And for a long time, I felt really stupid, because we would have these long days, 12, 14-hour days where there was a lot going on. And at the end of every day, these couple of guys would, sit around with their cowboy hats, smoking cigarettes and drinking beer in the office. And they would ask me the same questions every day. What'd you see today? What'd you learn today? What did you see today? And it was almost every single day. And almost every time they'd say, nope, wrong. And then would explain to me why. And after a couple of months of this went by, I literally thought, every day I thought, they're gonna fire me because I'm an idiot. Wow. You know what I mean? I'm convinced I'm an idiot, but but I was involved, and they kept spending a lot of time with me. And one day something happened, and I made a big mistake, and they were mad. And these guys were gentlemen. They were Texans. They don't get angry, right? They don't. That's not polite, right? And they were mad, and I apologized, and I was just distraught, and I thought, this is it. And one of them said to me, and pardon my language, and he literally squared me up and looked at me, and he said, look, if you ain't up, you ain't doing anything. And he turned away and he walked away. And I literally stood there, and I got back into my pickup truck, and I thought about it, and I'm like, he's right. If you're not making mistakes, you're not doing anything, right? Yeah. And that moment right there gave me a ton of confidence. And I ended up spending about another year and a half there, and they were pretty much done there. And they were telling everybody that in about a month, we were all going to go back home where we were from, because that's how they did this. And they said in about a month, I want to say it was like October 31st or something like that. They said, all right, we're all going to meet in Houston. I think they were buying an oil company, or they were taking over some type of oil company. The oil industry was not doing well at that time. Economy was getting crappy, and these guys were thrilled to death because there were all kinds of deals coming up. I said, okay, we're all going to meet here and whatever. And I went in the office, and I said, I'm not going. And they couldn't believe it. And I said, I'm going to go back home, and I'm going to start something. I'm not quite sure what yet. I got an idea, but I didn't tell him this, but in my mind, I'm thinking, I can do this. I know how to do it. I've watched it. I've seen it work. I know how all this goes, right? So I had all this confidence. They wished me well. They gave me a 2-month severance, which is really cool.
Wow.
And wished me luck, left me an open door. And I went back to the Midwest, moved into my parents' basement, crappy old salt box from, World War II, and, lived amongst the spider webs on this, crappy old 1950s table, and wired up a phone and started a business. And literally the night I got back, that I moved back there, it was a night of the year where, like, all the people I knew of my age would every year, this one night, would go to this one nightclub. So everybody would kind of catch up and whatever. And it was down in a basement area. And I walked down that flight of stairs, and I got about 3/4 of the way down. I was by myself, and I looked across the bar and the dance floor or whatever. And I swear to God, I said to myself in my head, I'm going to be more successful than anybody else here. And I went through that whole night. And, you meet up with everybody, and I heard about everybody getting their degrees and everybody in their jobs and whatever. And I'm just nodding my head and thinking, you guys got that, but I got this. I saw it all happen. I was part of it. I know how to do it. And I literally when I moved back, I had sold everything I had. I had $400 in cash. I sold everything from my boombox to my clothes to, everything.
Can I stop you? To me, that's super unique. Like, where does that confidence come from? Is that purely from your experience with these guys, or was that something that's kind of been there this whole time?
It was a perfect storm. It was a perfect combination of I was so sick of living this humiliating life of not having any money, of not having any of the things that I wanted, of not having any of the relationships that I wanted, all out of fear and embarrassment of the life that I was brought into. And I just had enough, And I just being put into that situation where I got to see that, it's not just like my parents and family had told me forever. It's not just doctors and lawyers that are well off. There's other people, and there's ways to do it, and it can be taught and it can be learned. And that combination, like I said, I came back, and that, how you have those things in your life that happen and they're in your memory and they are so clear, it's like they happened 20 minutes ago.
Yeah.
That's how me standing on those stairs, looking over that bar, and looking at that and saying that is like, I'm not embarrassed anymore.
Which, by the way, is a bold statement when you have $400 in your pocket. You just moved in with your parents. All your friends are coming back with degrees. I mean, I think that people, just having that confidence, that level of mindset, I think is, for me personally, that's what's led to a lot of success. It started with that belief in myself of I can become successful. So that's cool. You had such a defining moment right there.
It is. And that's why, for years I didn't share any of these stories, but I know they're so important. For somebody is going to listen to this interview, and it's gonna click. They're going to look. I just know it, that they're going to look at me and they're going to say, I'm that guy. I'm that guy. And if that idiot can do it, I can. I know that's what they're going to think. So I went back. I had my $400, and that whole night I walked around and talked to everybody and whatever, and just nodded. And I know some of those people were just laughing at me on the inside, and it didn't bother me one bit. Went back, and in literally almost 5 years to the day, 5 years and a couple of months, I had $1 million in assets. I was a millionaire.
Wow.
It's crazy. So ridiculous. It is so ridiculous to talk about and think about. But you got to remember, I know today, especially younger people would look at that and they'd say, big deal. Took you 5 years, to get to $1 million. I'm like, pre-internet, dude. Let's see you do it.
Yeah.
Right. I built a real business with real services and real products. Let's see. Let's see you do it. Let's see half you guys do that. You know what I mean? It wasn't easy. It's still not easy. But it literally went like that. And I had a end of year meeting with my accountant, and I had been living by that time I had been living, almost 5 years in this crappy little second floor duplex not far from my office. And I stopped at my accountant to go over the year end stuff, and I'm looking at it, and I'm like, it was like $1,408,000, something like that, right? Some number like that. And I'm like, I get $1 million in assets. And she didn't even look up at me. And she just kind of nodded, And I said, does that mean I'm a millionaire? And I kind of laughed at myself. And she said, yep. And went on. Yep. And I literally went home. And this is the other part that, then we can really go on and go on into what's going on now. Mm-hmm. But I do want to say this and make sure that people understand this. I went home from that meeting and I was like floored. Yeah. But I drove home in my 3-year-old pickup truck to my second floor crappy duplex, and I stopped on the way home and I bought myself, half a pound of fresh shrimp and some angel hair pasta. Mm-hmm. And I went up into my crappy little apartment and I made it, and I sat down on my couch in the same place that I always do and thought, okay, I'm there where I thought I'd never be, where I'm farther ahead of anybody that I know. Mm-hmm. And this is it. I'm still driving the same pickup truck in the same shitty apartment, eating pasta on my sofa, Yeah. So so it isn't, I know people that have never had it or never been there, have never had big successes. I think it's really easy for those people to look at, say, people like us, or people like you, and look at us and say, yeah, but you, I'm like, no, it's, they think it's easy to say, it's not just about the money, it's not just about money's not everything or whatever. No, that's absolutely true. When you hear people say that, it's absolutely true. It's more than just that, and that's kind of where my life went. Is I kept building that. I built that into a multi-million-dollar company, spread it into 3 more companies, and the stress just got incredible. Mm-hmm. And the more and more successful I got, everybody on the outside was looking at me thinking, this is, guys living the dream, right? Had the $1 million house by this point, got the $1 million house, trips all over the place, the cars, whatever, right? Got it all. And I am just absolutely fried and burnt and pressure and it's not great. And 2004, I went in for a routine physical. They said you have stage 3B testicular cancer. Wow. You got about 3 months to live. Go home, get your affairs in order.
Jeez,
wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, and it's and that's the thing is there's a sacrifice for everything, Yeah. And that's that was the start of how how we got to what we do now, and.
Are you saying there's a sacrifice to everything because of all the stress your body was under? Is that what led to that?
Yeah, absolutely. I had decided, I went home. I'd only been married a few years, and my wife and I, we had a very deep talk. Actually, I called her on the phone. I was up in Wisconsin when I got the news. It was at night. I got the news. And my wife was staying at our condo in Florida, in Naples. We had a vacation condo at the time. Or she might have been living there part-time and just going back and forth. And she flew up like the next day, and we had a conversation and kind of decided, all right, we're gonna fight. We're gonna try to find an answer. We're gonna fight. We'll spend it all. If I die, my wife's young enough, got my life insurance policy. Let's get after it. And we did. And my wife made me promise that I would put as much work into trying to find a way to survive as I did at work every day. Mm-hmm. And we spent $1.5 million, like 1.55 million of our own money. Wow. Lost everything. Ended up bankrupt, whatever. Traveled the world, got scammed by a lot of people. Some people helped, learned a ton. And, 4 years later, I survived. And during that time, my wife and I she's a hairstylist. She's one of the top hairstylists in the world, actually. She's very well known. And we had a discussion and come to realize that a lot of the chemicals and things that I was around every day were also in her hair and beauty products that she was using in the salon every day. Because we're literally sitting there and I'm like, I think it might have been this that triggered this and whatever. And she's like, I use that every single day on every single client. I'm like, you're kidding, right? And all this just kind of went on and on and on. So we decided, we're like, okay, if I live, because I'd come from the chemical and ingredient, industry, and she being in the salon industry, we decided we're going to try to, create products that work like salon professional quality products, but didn't have the chemicals in them. And when I got better, we did that. Now, granted, it took a little bit of time because after I finally got better, it took a good solid year for me to recover from the whole incident. And it was not just the physical part, because my body's tore apart, but it was also a mental thing. I had gotten a pretty bad case of chemo brain. So my, one of the things that I believe that had really made me successful over time was, was my mind, was my ability to talk, was my ability to negotiate things. And I felt like I had lost that. And it took me a while. I see that you guys are like this. I'll tell you a really quick story about where I finally got a breakthrough on that. Got to a point where I was, where it was really getting to me. And I was going to the beach every day, jet skiing or paddleboarding or whatever, mostly jet skiing every day by myself, right? In a little cove by myself. And it's this little cove in a gulf. And I know you guys will know what I mean. There's areas where you'll get some, waves that'll break on the shallow, areas close, like a little bit offshore, where the dip goes and right. And, the dolphins are, they're usually out there riding the waves too. They like to surf, right? And, so I'd be out there and whatever, and, they're looking at you and I'm looking at because they don't want you hitting them and I don't want them hitting me, right? But I mean, it was just day after day after day, I'm going out there. And then one day I'm coming off the face of this wave and I see this dolphins in the face of this wave and I'm coming off the top, right? So I'm going to come off the top of it. I'm going to ride the face, right? Yeah. And he's coming across the face and I see his eye and I'm like, I can't back off, right? And as I'm staring at him in his eye, I'm like staring at his eyes. And all of a sudden, as clear as day, I hear this voice in my head say, what in the hell are you still doing here? And it shocked me. And I tumbled over, ass over tea kettle. Of course, my butt hits the bottom, because it's that deep, right? And what happens? The waves take the jet ski and zoom right towards shore. So I'm like 250 yards offshore,
just stuck on a little shallow bar.
Wow.
Right. And I got to start swimming in a wetsuit and whatever. And I'm bitching and whatever. And then I had another breakthrough and I'm like, that's enough. That I'm like, I got through all this crap before and now I'm letting it get to me again, what other people are going to think about me or say about me, but I'm like, enough, right? Enough. And I'm pounding the water like an idiot. Luckily, I'm the only one out there. but I got out and I went back, loaded up, and I never went back there.
Dang,
wow.
Ever. I haven't been on a jet ski since. And I was going every day. I've been on a jet ski since. And but I did. So I did that and I really put my nose to the grindstone and started working with my wife and creating all these product lines. And we have I think 5 hair and beauty brands. We were the first like indie brand that really figured out how to make salon quality products that actually worked, that used only natural and organic ingredients.
Wow.
We were the first. Yeah. And
can I ask you a quick question before we transition into that piece of this? So when you're faced with such compelling evidence that you're in your last days, you know, they said you have 3 months to live. Was there ever, and this might be a little bit of a weird question, but was there ever a temptation in that where it just felt like everything was against you, and it sounds like you really had to fight to even get better, and you traveled and did a ton of research and invested in yourself and your health? Was there ever a point where you're like questioning yourself and you're like, I'm just like, this is it, I'm going to throw in the towel and what I've done is done? And, or how did you combat that compelling evidence that was saying your time is limited?
Well, you know what's funny? And this goes to another great point that I hope people listening to this will absolutely remember this, because it is so important. Whoever you pick for a mate is so vital to how the whole rest of your life is going to go.
Mm-hmm.
Don't take that lightly. You know, don't take the smart one because she's smart. Don't take the pretty one because she's pretty. Don't take the, you know, don't pick the one that everybody else tells you is the one.
Mm-hmm.
You know, don't take that choice of who you're going to marry lightly.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that because my wife grew up as a competitive gymnast. She was actually invited to to Bella Caroli's ranch in Texas, where all the elite U.S. gymnasts train or get tortured, whatever you want to consider it. Right? They turn. There's a reason why the women's U.S. Gymnastics team wins everything in the Olympics all the time, year after decade after decade after decade. It's because the Carolis turn them into little warriors. And my wife, growing up in that environment, she can be very hard to live with. She can be very hard to live with, but she's the kind of person that you want to be around, because the work ethic, she's got a work ethic. I don't know anybody with a work ethic like her. I don't know anybody that doesn't complain like she does. But she's also, for better or worse, and in my situation it was for better, we're not losing. There is no losing. We are not losing, period. When you're around people like that who really believe that, like that is their ethos. I'm winning, period. Period. There's no, right?
Yeah.
And having that, we talked about this over those 4 years, that 4-year period of me being sick. There was only one very small period where for her there was a little bit of where there was a little bit of where she thought maybe that was it, and it was the third time. I had stage 3B cancer 3 times. It wasn't until the third time that I beat it. Came back worse every time, but it was the second time going into the third time, and it was really aggressive and it was really fast. And I think she got scared. She's like, "Crap, we ain't gonna get it this time," right? Like we knew it, and we were laying in bed one night, and she said a couple of things, and I realized that, but literally as soon as that was gone, it was right back to the fight. Like she had got that out, wanted to get that one thing out, and it was boom, right back to the fight. We never thought I was gonna die. Everybody else thought I was gonna die. We never thought it.
Wow.
I'm not saying that I very well couldn't have,
right.
But we just didn't have that. And we go into business the same way. And that's why I think we've been successful with all the things that we've been doing is, it's not that, we've got a no quit attitude. It doesn't mean that we won't adjust the plan if things are, test, learn, adjust, learn, adjust. I mean, we've made a lot of adjustments, over the years, but we don't quit.
Yeah. So after that period, the 3 beating it for the third time, you're feeling better, but it kind of took a mental toll on you as well. Lost a lot of your money, lost a lot of confidence because you didn't feel like you had the mental edge. So that's when you went, jet skiing to the Cove and kind of escaping it in a sense. And then you're like, enough, I got to go fight again. So that kind of leads us back to what you were saying of launching these brands you're currently running, I believe, right?
Yeah, and that's it, and really, put our heads down to it, and did it. And there were a lot of people who are very, very well known, very, very powerful people in the health and beauty industry who laughed at us and said it had never happened. It'd never work. You can't do it. There's a reason the big companies aren't doing it. It's because you can't make them this way. You can't make them without toxins and chemicals and whatever. And and that, I mean, for people like my wife and I, it's like the worst thing you could say to us, right?
Totally.
Like, on the fire.
Game on.
Hold my beer, right? It might take me a while, but we'll get it. And and we did. I'm sure you guys don't know a lot about like, say, the hair industry in general, but my wife was the person that brought non-toxic, non-ammonia, pretty much chemical-free professional hair clus to the American Board of Certified Master Hair Colorists Organization, which is in the United States, that's the the governing body.
Jeez.
And she was the one to bring him there, and was pretty much blackballed for it for a number of years.
Dang, that's crazy. So was that the first brand that you guys started?
No, that was actually while we were still creating our other brands. Okay. That was a connection with another brand, and my wife just was able to figure out how to do important things in that industry, like make it color gray and stick. Stuff like that, stuff that you couldn't do with things that didn't have chemicals in them. And the big governing boards didn't want to hear it.
Yeah,
my wife started calling them dinosaurs.
Yeah.
You guys you're not paying attention to where this industry is going. And then 2 years later, we went to some of the biggest hair industry shows in the world, which are, I know the average person doesn't realize them, but they're gigantic. The industry is huge, health and beauty, huge. But we started going to some of the biggest shows about 2 years later, and all of a sudden, sure enough, L'Oreal, multi-billion-dollar brands started coming out with their own brands, and we just sat back and laughed, and we're like, see, we're on the cutting edge.
It was possible.
And so we started creating, we created a line called Raw Hair Organics. We created another line after that called Raw Curls. Raw Curls is a natural and organic brand for curly, ethnic, textured hair, which right now in 2020, about 70 to 75% of people worldwide have that particular type of hair.
Wow.
And we make specific products for that. We're probably the second largest indie brand for that literally started in my kitchen. I mean, if you go to my Facebook page, you scroll back, you'll see pictures of our house, like covered in boxes and stuff. It was like a factory. And so we have that. We sell that in almost 100 countries worldwide now.
Dang.
We have a natural and organic pet product line that we created called Raw Paws. We have a skincare line called RH Organics Skincare, which is a natural and organic anti-aging, age-defying brand of products that won a 2019 Best of the Best award from Organic Spa magazine. 2 products in our Raw Curls line won 2020 Best of the Best Leaders in Curl All-Time Holy Grail Awards from naturallycurly.com. That is the highest award in curly hair products in the world. We won 2 of them in 2020. And then what else do we have? So I got Raw Hair Organics, Raw Paws, Rod's Grooming. No, we didn't do that. That was after that. And then we have the Raw Organics line now, which is our supplement line. And that is actually a lifestyle brand. Started out with a green juice powder, and it's the one that I used when I was fighting cancer. Not that it cures cancer, but it was actually created for me when I was searching for answers. I found a guy who was a Chinese medicine physician who actually treated Fidel Castro, Cuban guy.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, actually treated him, I think twice when he was battling cancer and something else. And I met this guy, and he looked at all my records and he said, you're really sick, and I'm sure you know that. And I'm like, yeah. He told me I'm down to about a month, and he said to me, he said, if I can't get you healthy first, he said, it's not going to matter if you find something to kill the cancer, because everything else in your body's shutting down. So he created this green juice powder for me. I started taking it twice a day, and along with some other stuff. And I, over the course of a couple of months, I got significantly better, and it bought me time, is what it did. I didn't realize how bad I felt until I felt good.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting how that worked, and how that blend was put together. It had 12 superfoods in it and whatever. And I'm like, well, what about these other things that you see on the market? That one says I got 75 vitamins and minerals in this and whatever. And he's like, your body can't use all that. And first of all, and second of all, to have 75 of anything in a scoop this big, it's not going to be enough to do anything. And at the time I was, I had some trepidation because, I'm an American, more is better, right? It's got to be better, right? More of a good thing, right? It didn't make any sense to me until I started taking it, and I continue to take it ever since. And over the years, I had a number of my friends, come stay at my house, and I didn't realize this till probably 3 or 4 years ago, where I had some close friends of mine finally started saying, they said, when you got better, we all thought for sure you were going to start selling that stuff, because I'm me, right?
Totally.
I'm a sales guy. And I'm like, and I said, I'm not gonna do it. And they're like, why? And I said, because then I got to tell this story, and I just don't want to relive it. I'm just not, But one of my friends actually convinced me. We had a conversation, and he convinced me by saying, in a roundabout way, saying, you got to look at this and say this out of your own mouth. So, so you went through this whole journey. You were lucky enough to have the money and the resources and the drive to be able to search the world to get the answer to survive this cancer, not once, but 3 times. And now, you survive, and now you're just going to move on with life like nothing happened, and just kind of forget it. Like, really? Really? And when I thought of it that way, I was like, yeah, it does sound kind of ridiculous. Yeah, I'm good. See you later. I'm going to do this now. Right.
Totally.
Like, wait, what about, and I did, I came to terms with it, and I finally decided to start making it. And I knew it was more of a lifestyle thing, which is what I learned about toxins on, what you put in your body, is important, but what you put on your body is just as important. So, so I created this line, this Raw Organics line, and it's a lifestyle brand, is what it is. So I've got, organic shampoo, organic conditioner, really high quality face cream, face wash, body wash, shave cream, and aftershave balm that's got an ingredient that I got that's patented by the U.S. military for healing battlefield wounds quickly. So it's really good for nicks and scrapes and stuff. So I did all this stuff to put this together. And I hope I don't offend anybody, and I don't know who any of your clients are, so I apologize ahead of time, but what really pushed me over the edge to actually finally do it, take what I knew about, it's not just what you put in, it's on the outside. And I'm making all the stuff. I need to make stuff for this and make it affordable, like really affordable, where even an average, person, they can't look at it and say, I can't afford that, and make it really, really good quality. But I started to see all these other, like these juice companies and drink companies that are showing up on my, Facebook feed, my Instagram feed. And I'm like, this is horse. It's all, 24-year-old guys walking around without their shirts on, trying to convince 48-year-old women that they're going to look like that. If they drink their, I'm like, you even know, I'm like, you guys white labeled this stuff. Don't tell me you made it.
Yeah.
I got my own lab. I had my own lab since 1989. Right. I mean, I just, and I know it because I lived it. I mean, none of these people, none of them have a story.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, I mean, you guys know the name. Don't make me name them, but you guys know the major.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
You know the dollars they're making because they're talking about them in different, in different environments. You guys know the ones, and I just sit back and literally that's how I just kept sitting back. I'm like, you guys are so full of it. I'm like, it's just wrong. It's just wrong. So so I came up with the Raw Organics deal. Never intended to make any money on it. Still don't. If I do, great. If I don't, I don't care. It's not the idea. The idea is I need guys like me and you to understand it, to hear my story about what happened to me, especially entrepreneurs, because you know what the lifestyle's like, and to realize, hey, it's not just that guy. Everybody always thinks when stuff like what happened to me, they always think that happens to other people. That doesn't happen to me. Well, I thought the same thing. This stuff it matters, and if you don't, it's gonna bite you, and it's gonna bite you when you don't want it, and you're gonna end up like me, where you come from nothing. You build yourself your own little empire, and you lose it because you neglect everything else. Right, and then you get to do it again. Which is kind of okay because I really enjoy what I do. But you know what I mean? If I had a choice, I wouldn't. But
that brings me to a good question, because you had such a good point earlier. What would you say to yourself when you were, super stressed out, trying to build businesses, build more money? What would you go back and say to yourself then? Would you tell yourself to slow down? I mean, knowing what you know now, you wouldn't trade that experience for anything. But if you could go back and tell yourself, like, hey, you don't need to stress yourself out this much. You don't need to run your body in the ground just to make money. Would there be anything like that, or what would you say to yourself? And
I know how hard this is for a lot of people. It was really hard for me to accept. I am not a believer in the commonly held belief of work-life balance. I do not believe that exists. There is no such thing as work-life balance, because if you're doing something that's life-related, the work is suffering. If you're doing something work-related, the life is suffering. It might be that much. It might be that much, but it's still, it can't balance. It can't. That being said, you have to learn, and I'm talking to myself. I needed to do this. I needed to learn and understand how to comfortably live in the unbalance, and that's it. Because time off, or time away, or time doing other things, say not business related, which for somebody like me is really tough, and especially for my wife as well. And I think especially after, what we went through for my wife, I think it's even harder, because she runs a big salon. She's got product lines. She runs an academy. We're building a facility on our property in Naples to train people. I mean, we got a lot going on. And I think after going through what we went through, I think, for her, it's really hard. And I know it is for a lot of people to not, you don't want to not make hay when the sun's shining. You know what I mean? It's hard to not. But at the same time, we've learned as well that there's value in getting away and doing something, family, recreation, whatever that is. But you have to accept. I really believe it's such an off-base mantra to be able to say the term work-life balance. There is none. There is none. It's impossible. You have to learn to comfortably live in the unbalance, but you got to do it on both ways.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, one thing we always say is, I feel like it's a way to communicate a similar sentiment, but we say, coming alive where you're planted. And it doesn't matter what season of life you're in or where your focus is. It's just, life goes through a lot of different seasons, and sometimes you're putting a lot into business, sometimes you're putting a lot into family or whatever, and you got to be able to come alive and thrive no matter what the external circumstances are.
Yeah, Ken, we want to be respectful of your time too today. That was all really good stuff. Anything else that you want to share with the listeners? Any parting words? And then also would love to know where people can find all these awesome products that you're talking about.
Yeah, well, and for people that know me, I could talk for hours and hours about this. There's just so much that I've learned during this. One thing that I'd like to tell, especially younger people that I run into is don't discount the knowledge that people older than you have acquired by not only just living, but by living in the business world. Yeah, things were different 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, but there's a lot of pitfalls that you can avoid that can be giant pitfalls if you just take the time to listen to them. Yeah. One of the things that I have found, sadly, with a lot of young people around me is they won't acknowledge the people that got them where they got, or where they are now. Yeah. They don't acknowledge those. And if you listen to me, and I tell the story in the same way, is had it not been for the time that those gentlemen spent with me in the venture capital world, there's no way I'd be where I am today. No way. They looking back, it's almost embarrassing for me to think how much time they wasted on me. How much they didn't have to. I mean, time is everybody's most valuable asset, and yet they gave it to me freely. They gave me all that knowledge, for free, and both of them have passed on now, but I always made sure that I let them know that. And what was really funny is that one of them would always tell me, don't tell me, show me. And it really, if there's such thing as sanctified pride, I had sanctified pride in being able to have them look at me years later and say, yep, he did what we told him, and and got where he is, and acknowledges where he got it from. So that I think is really, really important. I think way too many people in the especially in the 35 and under space, I think they discount the knowledge and help that they can get from people who are much older than them, that have lived through a whole lot more. Like, just for example, like right now, okay, this last year with COVID, it's been disastrous for a lot of businesses. Well, I'm only 55, and I've been through, literally in my business life, 4 major downturns. Yeah. You don't get through 4 major downturns and survive and not learn a little something about getting through.
Totally. Yep.
A stupid 9-month pandemic. I'm like, big deal. Watch the stock market go down 40%, see how you do, or 30%, see how you do. Right. Wow. But you get what I'm saying, is that it's there's so much knowledge and help out there that you can get. Utilize it.
Yeah.
Utilize it.
Man, that's so good. And totally appreciate, I feel like I'm just sitting here soaking this in, and, hearing you talk and your experience and stuff. I'm actually feeling really grateful for you being generous with your time and taking the time to share some of those lessons. I feel extremely blessed. So thank you.
Well, you're very welcome. Oh, let me throw one other thing out there.
Yeah, okay. Go for it.
And you guys will appreciate this. One of the other things that I started a couple of years ago was a podcast and video show like this. And my wife and I do it every week. It's called the Curly Hair Q&A Show. And in 2019, it won the award of second place of as the number 2 podcast in the hair and beauty industry that you must subscribe to in 2019.
Nice.
That's
And
awesome.
I started it, started it in the hair industry, and it has absolutely been a huge tool in the growth of our product lines and our companies. And it wasn't easy to do at first. We have a lot of great equipment now and whatever, but we didn't. We started it very basic with a cell phone. But the thing that I wanted to share about that's important, start a podcast. Start a podcast and give away your best knowledge for free.
Yeah.
Don't do a podcast and give away, this much information to lure them into your BS $49.97 course, right? Give it away, because that's exactly what we do. Like I said, my wife is one of the best in the business in the world. We sit there for an hour every single week without fail. That's another thing. You're going to do a podcast, make sure you're there when you say you're going to be there. And we probably got about 400 or so episodes now that finished. And what's really interesting is without using it as a tool to sell and just giving knowledge, I can literally, here's a secret. I hope only industry people are listening to this like you and I, but trust me, after a while, that podcast, we can recommend products and as the correct answer to legitimate questions from people live. And when the show is over, for the next 3 hours afterwards, I can go in the analytics in my website and just watch them spike.
Wow, that's cool.
That is awesome. Yeah, and a lot of people in e-commerce don't think about that, of a podcast being valuable. It's more of the service industry like we're in. So that's super good advice for all the e-com store owners.
That's huge.
Yep. People will always ask me when I tell them to do a podcast, whenever, and they'll always say, well, I don't understand how you make money at it. And I'm like, my podcast is 7:30 p.m. Eastern time every Monday night, and by midnight I'll make $5-6 grand every single Monday.
Yeah,
and that's just the live portion, right?
Totally.
And the thing is that the way we do it is we don't sell anybody anything. We just give them the right answers. You give them the right answers, and even the people that don't, I know that eventually, they're coming back. They just do. It's the whole gift. It really is. Gary Vee talks about all the time about the whole thing about give, ask. When you have a podcast, you can give, and it gets to a point where you don't even have to ask. It's coming back to you. It's the what do they call it? Reciprocity bias, where you give so much that the people that are getting it from you, that are receiving, have to subconsciously, they have to even that out. And they do. They just do a podcast. Podcast is probably the biggest thing tip that I can give people right now in business. Just start it, even if nobody's listening. I did it when I first started it on my own. I was doing it on my own. Nobody was listening. Nobody, not even my relatives. But after a while, all of a sudden it spiked up, and I won't tell you what our numbers are, but they're really, really, really good, award-winning.
Yeah, that sounds like it.
And they weren't 4 years ago. They weren't.
Yeah.
So, podcasts like what you guys are doing here, and I've listened to every single one of your shows.
Wow.
Just put out great content.
Wow. Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Ken.
Sure.
Really blessed to have you on today, and we'll catch you later.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, you can check us out, rawganics.com, RAWGANX.com, rawhairorganics.com, rawpaws.com, rawcurls.com. I think that's it.
Yeah,
we'll include the notes so people can find that.
Yeah, we'll
just click on it.
We'll make it easy for them. Put all the links below. All right.
Wonderful. Great. Thanks a lot. Take care, you guys.